please.
Well, lovely to see everybody, and it is cool that this is working and we can see you. That doesn't always happen in meetings I'm in, so I'm really pleased that I can get some visual feedback. I have prepared a talk just about some of the background stuff around Tuatara and their conservation, and so I'm just going to try and show that to you. I guess if you want to chat, if you've got any questions throughout, just put them on the chat and we can have a look at them as we go or at the end. And if something is going wrong with the sharing, then maybe tell me on the chat as well. That might be useful. So I'll just try and share my screen now. This is when I realize I can't see it. So.
Okay, not coming up. So Julie,
well, I can share my desktop, but I'm not sure what. There we go. How's that?
Going. It'll come well. Oh, it will do. It will do. You need to choose the right one, Nicky.
Pace ourselves. Well, I think I've. How's that? Have you got something that looks like a tuatara?
No, we've got your file listing. Huh. So we know all about your files.
Good, that's really good. Yep, I'll try it. It worked perfectly when I tried this beforehand. Anyone would think I did this for a living, wouldn't you? How about that one?
It'll come in a minute. Oh, that's a tuatara, Nicky, well done.
Okay. Perfect. So that's what I'm talking about, Tuatara. And as you all already know, so I'm not really clear why I'm giving you a talk at all, Tuatara are a reptile, and this is what they look like. And if I had been doing this in person, I would have come with a Tuatara. So I'm really sorry right up front that I'm not doing that this time. Maybe we can schedule that another time. But normally I come out and talks, and I bring Spike, who is a great big male tuatara from Stevens Island with me. So anyway, let's talk about him anyway. So this is a tuatara on Stevens Island, or Takaporewa, where I've conducted most of my research, and it's in the Marlborough Sounds. And this is based on research inspired, I guess, by the fact that people know tuatara pretty cool, and they've been around for a long time. Their lineage goes back 230 million years, but there's this real concern with climate change. So I get asked for comment a lot on whether tuatara will survive. So this is the story about a tuatara survival story. And hopefully this will work, which it's not. What I might do is just go to a holding sharing again. I'll go back to this version of it and see if I can get it
to move. I'm just thinking.
Yep. Sorry, we're going to say something?
Julie, your screen's frozen at the moment. So, Nicky, why don't you try and get that back up?
We can just reduce the bandwidth a little bit. If we can just stop the video, it would help.
I can go. Can you see?
We can, Nicky. So if you click on through
so
that,
I'll just click on through it then. Yeah, like that. So this way you can get the next picture up. Now what do you have? Denise?
That's right. That's the picture, the pretty picture of the Marlborough Sounds.
Perfect. So moving right along. So look, New Zealand used to be quite different than it is now. And so when Tuatara first arrived on our landmass, it was a landmass that was a big supercontinent and the part of the hemisphere, and it split off into islands that became New Zealand. And so New Zealand is now characterized as a whole lot of islands. And the situation for Tuatara since they arrived on our island landmasses has become massively different in the time that we've been around. So although 80 million years ago, there would have been no humans, and Tuatara and many other species that are unique to New Zealand would have been here, now our islands, our situation looks very different for them. So this is the Marlborough Sounds. It would have been forested from cliff to cliff. And these are the kind of typical places where you still can find tuatara, but the place looks very different for them now. So tuatara used to living in a situation which is forested. I'm really sorry, this is freezing on me. Forested from cliff to cliff, and let's see if this will work. And so the situation has gone from a forested environment for tuatara to something that has pasture, that has buildings, that has humans and rats, and it's very different. Not only was it covered in forest, the situation where tuatara adapted to, but it had a whole lot of species that were really abundant that we just don't see nowadays. And so the reason that probably froze before is because they have a sound file. This is a fairy prawn, and there are more than 1 million on a 250 hectare island, screeching at all night so that you can hardly hear the person next to you speaking. This is the environment that tuatara were adapted to. Millions of seabirds dropping out of the sky to burrow in nests under the ground under this forest. Forest that looks like Jurassic Park, enormous Nico palms, really cool plants that have flowers from, this is koikoi, that have flowers coming out of their trunks. Just really amazing forest that you just don't see nowadays, partly because of herbivores, but also because of introduced mammalian predators. And giant insects. These are giant weta that you find where tuatara live. They're the size of a mouse. Okay, the female's there on the left, she's the biggest one, the size and weight of a mouse and functioning in that position in our environment. So a lot of components that are different now for tuatara. I'm focusing in on tuatara because they're a great story for all of these species. They live in the same place. They've had to cope with this change of environment, and they're a cool iconic species that everyone knows about, but hardly anyone has had an up close and personal experience with them because they just are now stuck on islands where we can protect them from rats in the most part. And some of the other cool things about them I like are tuatara top predator, which means that they can eat those seabirds. They generally only eat the heads off them, and they generally eat the ones that, the fluffy little chicks here, like this big male tuatara is found. And so they're out there as a top predator in our system. They were a normal part of our ecological functioning of our systems everywhere in New Zealand. And a lot of you got this right. They have been around for a long time. Their lineage is thought to date back 230 million years. And so that's their lineage. They may not have been the same beast as they are today, because clearly the environment has changed in 230 million years, but their lineage dates back, their closest relatives branch off about 230 million years ago. So their closest relatives are the lizards. So if anyone starts telling you tuatara lizard, you're like, no, actually not so. They were first described as a lizard because they look externally like a lizard, but there are half a dozen different features that makes them in a completely different order. So they're as different from lizards as they are from from their other relatives. So if we think about the reptiles, tuatara reptile, they're in their own order. So hopefully you've got a tree up here. The divisions, give me a nod, Denise, because I can see it on the screen. Thank you. So tuatara here, maybe you can see my mouse even.
Yep.
And their closest relatives are the lizards and the snakes. So tuatara are in their own order. Lizards and snakes are in their own order, and that division dates back 230 million years. And they're very, very different from the two other orders of reptiles, which are the turtles and tortoises, and the alligators and crocodiles. You'll note here birds are just you might think of them as special, but they're just another kind of reptile, really. Okay, so we have this situation with tuatara where everywhere they're this major contributor to our ecosystem. They're a top predator eating all sorts of things like seabirds and and a giant weta, and then humans arrived and we changed things a lot. So even on islands that we think of that are Tuatara hotspots, like Stevens Island or Takapode, or at the top of the Marlborough Sounds, even those places are changed a lot for Tuatara to survive on. So, for example, we have put lighthouses on a lot of our islands just because of, you know, safety for shipping. We've taken out a lot of the forest because the lighthouse keepers put houses on there. They had farms and so on. So things look very different for where they used to live. This is just to show you some of the places where we know that Tuatara used to live, to give you some idea about how everywhere they were. So they were on islands, but they were also, if we look at this dot in here, I mean, what the heck? That place has snow for 3 months of the year. So they're going to have been stuck in a burrow, hunkering down. You know, they know how to do a COVID shutdown, let me tell you. They were everywhere. Now, these dots are only where we know that they were from subfossil remains. So where there's not a dot, and a point here to Stewart Island down the bottom, we don't know whether Tuatara were there. Was it too cold? We don't know. Because where you keep subfossils are not the places where you might have expected Tuatara to live. So we only have information for where subfossils could be retained, like sand dunes or cave deposits. If those kind of situations for keeping subfossils aren't there, then we have no information on whether they were there. Anyway, the basic point is they were everywhere. Nowadays, we're left with the dregs. I haven't bothered to put the whole of New Zealand up here, not because I, you know, disregard the mainland. I'm from the mainland. But the fact is, the remnant population stopped at Cook Strait. There were, at worst, 32 offshore islands that we retained Tuatara on. And when I say retained them, in one case that was one animal that was known from an island. So, but we know why this is. So can Tuatara survive? Well, we know what the main cause of decline is, and it's these guys. And this is a picture taken at Ngā Manu, not staged, by Peter McKenzie and his camera that just took the situation, couldn't believe it. But this is a possum and a rat going for a bird's nest, not a Tuatara nest, but it just shows how devastating these introduced predators can be. So basically anywhere where you get possums, rats, stoats, cats, dogs, pigs, you name it, then you will not have Tuatara. The only mammal that stayed around with Tuatara was Kiori, and even then we think those populations were in severe decline, so a smaller Pacific rat. So we only retained Tuatara at all because we had islands, and these islands were places where rats didn't get to. The last extinction of a Tuatara population was in 1986 when rats got to an island in an extremely low tide through a close proximity of island sandbars, basically, and the rats were able to get across. And basically all the Tuatara on that island in 6 months. So can we conserve Tuatara? Well, yes, we know how to get rats off places. You know, so many of you put up your hands about rat trapping. We know this on our mainland now, how to get rid of rats, cats, mustelids, you know, so stoats. So yes, we can deal with those kind of things, but there is more to consider with a species like Tuatara. So I'm just talking you through a little bit of a case study. This is Stevens Island or Takapode, where this is the hot spot for Tuatara. This is the place I said, one of those examples which would have been forested from this cliff right through to this cliff and then had vineland going down this other cliff. Look at all that pasture. Okay, that was what the lighthouse keepers had to maintain themselves in between boat visits with food, right? But Tuatara do well on this island. There are 30 to 50,000, did you hear that right? 5 figures of Tuatara on this island. You can't walk anywhere at night without wondering where you're going to put your foot, because it might stand on Tuatara. That's how many there are. And we think that's in part because of the human changes to the landscape. So although there were sheep on here in this pasture, that was also a nice open area for Tuatara to nest. Here's a Tuatara guarding a nest. That were warm enough for great incubation. So it's possible there are more Tuatara on this island than anywhere else because of great incubation conditions. And what we know about this island is that it's a lot about Tuatara because there are a lot of them on that island. So we can go out there and study Tuatara in a way that we can't in any other location just because of the sheer numbers. And what we've learned from places like this, where we've done the research, is that Tuatara have a sex determination pattern, which you may already have seen in the media, and that's around temperature dependent sex determination. So if you put eggs in an incubator down here at 18 degrees Celsius, you will get only girls produced from that incubator. If you put them in an incubator up here at 22 degrees Celsius, you will get only boys from that incubator. So we can dial up the sex of a Tuatara egg. The reason for that is, you know, your dad, when he, you know, got close with your mum, what he carried on his sperm determined your sex. So your sex was determined by dad's sperm at fertilization that created you. Whereas if you're a Tuatara, then there is the mating opportunity in February, March, but the sex is not determined until halfway through time that that egg is in the ground. So even when the female lays the eggs in the ground in November, they're not determined by sex. They are sitting in the ground, and halfway through that incubation, when all of the other organs are developing, like heart, lungs, the gonads are also taking a direction towards males if it's a warm nest, or females if it's a cool nest. And I'll show you that with, I just explained some of the pictures here. This is little babies incubating in captivity at Vic Uni. There's a cool YouTube clip if you want to see one popping out of an egg. They virtually burst out of the egg. We can't tell what sex baby Tuatara are, so I've used a laparoscope technique, which is a small surgical procedure, much like if you've ever had a keyhole surgery. And I can inspect their gonads and see if they're ovaries or testes. And this is a picture at the bottom, shows you the difference between a male and a female when they're adults. So that's the male at the top there. There's some subtle differences. Okay, so we know about this in a lab, but we also know about this in the field. So we can put data loggers, which is these little loggers down here, complete with some baby Tuatara that popped out of the nest at the same time. We can monitor temperatures in nests and understand what's happening in real nests. And so throughout a year-long incubation, we can measure the temperature every day. And I did this every hour for every day using the data loggers, watching the temperatures go up and down here on a daily basis through summer, that's January to March, through winter where it's a lot cooler. And we know that cool nests also produce girls, and warm nests here on the bottom produce only boys. That line across there on each graph is at 21 degrees Celsius. So if you get temperatures in February-ish that are really, really warm, like in this nest here, almost the whole time that nest spent above 21 degrees, that's what signals the direction of those eggs to develop as boys. Okay, so warm nests produce boys. Bugger. Because climate change means that we're having fewer cool years. So I've nabbed this graph here from the NIWA website, which has got a whole lot of cool stuff on climate change if you want to look it up, and on what this year's like as far as a warm year or a cool year. So I borrowed this graph, and it basically says, okay, let's treat normal as 1971 to 2000. That's our average. On average, is this year warmer or cooler than what we think of as average? And so back in the day, 1850s, it was a lot cooler on average than what we would have normally expected as normal in the 70s, 80s and 90s in New Zealand. Okay, there's a few warm years, but they're few and far between. And so what you can see now, though, nowadays in the 2000s, is that we get a whole lot more warmer than average days these days. And so that's a concern, because if we're getting more warmer than average days, then possibly our Tuatara nests are going to be warmer than average. So even if we had female producing nests in these years, sometimes in the same place in another year, if a female goes to nest again, all of the nests in that rookery in that place will become boys instead of where previously we might have expected that area to produce girls. So the concern for Tuatara is, will climate warming with more warm years produce an unbalanced sex ratio towards males? Now, no big deal, right? Tuatara live for 100 years. Females go to nest every 2 to 5 years. Some of you got that right in the poll. So, you know, over 100 years with nesting every 2 to 5 years, you know, a few boys, a few girls. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that it's an odds thing. It's on average, how many boys can we actually cope with in a population? Now, I'm not meaning to be sexist there, blokes, right? This is about the fact that once you get up over about 65% males, then you have fewer females laying eggs. And if fewer females lay eggs, then there's fewer hatchlings. If all those hatchlings are then having a preponderance of boys, then you're exacerbating that position. So that is the main sort of concern, I would say. Well, that's all cool. We can incubate our eggs and dial up the temperature, right? So we can artificially incubate and offset this issue. So we have some tools at our disposal. We can also head start babies, and this is at Wellington Zoo. We've done this at Ngā as well, Nature Reserve in Waikanai, and we can do this really successfully. We can hatch a lot more eggs than would hatch in nature. We can produce a lot more babies than would survive in nature, because everything likes eating a little baby Tuatara. We can get buckets of baby Tuatara, buckets of them. How cool is that? It's hard to count those, by the way, because they're usually moving. And we can translocate them in this highly technical piece of equipment called a glad wrap tube. And we can put them on islands, and they do well. So we can have the skills to manage this situation, even if we do occasionally have to go to work by helicopter. And we can put them back on islands, and this has been happening. We've got them on Titi Island. That was the first translocation. Did that for my master's project on Machu Somes Island, where they were put in 1998, and that was really cool because that was the first location you could go and visit Tuatara without a permit. They were now accessible to the public. And best of all, we can have them in places like Zealandia and bring them back to the mainland. And that is really amazing because you can see Tuatara in the wild on the mainland. In fact, I'd put a challenge out there for you guys, since you're in Wellington. When we get back to a level where you can go back into Zealandia, the best number of baby Tuatara seen on that stretch along the fence line, I'm sure you know where I'm talking about, is 14 babies. Okay, so that's your chocolate fish moment if you get more than 14 babies on that stretch in one go. Okay, so we can do this, and so yes, we have a lot of capacity to conserve Tuatara in the future. However, and this is just my final point, because we just don't know the answer for the climate change issue, right? One of our biggest problems is on places like this. Now, this is North Brother Island. If you're heading to the South Island on the ferry, you are just about to enter Tory Channel. You've been through the strait. It's been a lovely, calm day as per normal. You've got this great view out your window on the right-hand side. There's a rock with a lighthouse out there on the right-hand side, just on the east side of Arapawa Island, and that is North Brother. It's the only rock lighthouse. You can see the size of one of the lighthouse keepers' houses on here. It's about 4 rugby fields of habitat for Tuatara. It has about 500 Tuatara on it. Now, the issue for this island is, it's hard to tell here, but that whole green slope faces north. It's a rock, had very shallow soils. Any female that's going to nest there is putting it into a warm, north-facing, shallow burrow, and is producing boy hatchlings. So our concern for places like this, and we watch places like North Brother Island intently, because these could be our window into what happens in the future with climate change with our other more robust populations. We think North Brother is in an extinction vortex trajectory. What we mean by that is we've detected a male biased population. Males are bigger, they get more food. they're more aggressive, they're out more, they get more food, and therefore they're the ones that get the food, not the females. What that means is what food there is on a rock is limited, and so you get reduction in body condition. A reduction in body condition means that you have fewer eggs less often. When you do have babies, they are going to be more male biased because of the situation of the shallow north facing soils. And so you exacerbate, moving down the vortex, this male biased issue on the island. So ultimately, we may be going to watch Tuatara on an island that we can see individuals on, but it's functionally extinct because there are few females or no females left on that island. So that is the concern for Tuatara going forward. It's not the concern for every island right now because Takaporewa or Stevens Island has a larger population that is an even sex ratio. This population here is already at 70% males. So on that point, I think I've probably sucked up enough time from the meeting, and probably there are a few questions that I haven't already dealt with in there that are just Tuatara facts and figures. And once again, an apology for not being able to bring Spike to an online. Yeah, I am not even allowed to visit him. Where he's an essential service, we are allowed to go and feed him once a week, and that's it.